The steady rhythm of medical equipment created a somber symphony in room 417, where Marcus Holloway lay motionless, his once powerful frame now reduced to a fragile silhouette against crisp white sheets. At 62, he looked older than his years, the golden empire he'd built seeming to crumble as quickly as his health. Photographs scattered on the side table told a story of success: corporate awards, yacht parties, international business conferences, yet they were conspicuously absent of family portraits. Marcus Holloway had been many things in his life: a ruthless venture capitalist, a strategic business mogul who could negotiate multi-million-dollar deals before breakfast, a man who had conquered every professional challenge that stood in his way. But standing in the sterile hospital room, surrounded by machines that monitored his failing body, he had never felt more defeated. Pancreatic cancer, the doctors had told him 3 months ago. Terminal. 6 months, maybe less. The prognosis was delivered with clinical detachment, a language Marcus knew well from years of boardroom negotiations. But this was one deal he couldn't close, one battle he couldn't win with strategic planning or financial leverage. His corporate empire, built over decades of relentless work, seemed meaningless now. Billions in assets, multiple international offices, yet not a single family member had visited since his diagnosis. His only daughter, Sarah, hadn't spoken to him in over 15 years, not since that catastrophic argument where pride and stubbornness had severed their relationship permanently. The hospital room at Mercy General was a far cry from the luxurious penthouses and executive suites Marcus was accustomed to. Pale mint green walls, the faint smell of disinfectant, and the constant hum of medical technology created an environment that felt more like a waiting room for inevitability than a place of healing. Elena Rodriguez entered the room, her soft footsteps barely audible against the linoleum floor. At 35, she carried herself with a quiet grace that belied the challenges of her profession. Her deep brown eyes, lined with a hint of weariness, scanned Marcus's chart with professional precision. Dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, her navy blue scrubs crisp and immaculate, she embodied the compassion that defined her nursing career. She had seen countless patients like Marcus, wealthy, isolated, their lives defined more by professional achievements than personal connections. But something about this particular patient seemed different. A profound loneliness radiated from him, more palpable than his medical condition. As Elena adjusted his fore and checked his vital signs, Marcus's eyes flickered open. For a moment, they locked gazes, a connection that would soon transform both their lives in ways neither could possibly imagine. Background and context: the making of a millionaire. Marcus Holloway wasn't born into privilege. The son of a factory worker and a part-time waitress in a small industrial town in Michigan, he understood struggle from his earliest memories. His father, Jack Holloway, worked grueling 12-hour shifts at the local automobile manufacturing plant, while his mother, Margaret, pieced together income from waitressing and occasional cleaning jobs. From a young age, Marcus was driven by an insatiable desire to escape the cycle of financial hardship that defined his childhood. While other kids played after school, he delivered newspapers, mowed lawns, and saved every penny. His intelligence became his ticket out. Full academic scholarships to Michigan State University marked the beginning of his transformation. By 25, Marcus had graduated with dual degrees in finance and computer science, a combination that would prove revolutionary in the emerging tech investment landscape of the late 1980s. His first breakthrough came when he identified a small software startup that most investors overlooked. With borrowed money and an intuitive understanding of technological potential, he invested everything he had. 3 years later, that small investment turned into a $12 million return. The success changed everything. Marcus became known as a wunderkind of venture capital, with an uncanny ability to predict technological trends before they became mainstream. But success came at a profound personal cost. His marriage to Sarah's mother, Elizabeth, began to crumble under the weight of his relentless ambition. Long nights turned into weeks away from home. Business trips became more frequent than family dinners. When Sarah was born, Marcus saw her more in photographs than in person. By the time she reached her teenage years, the emotional distance was insurmountable. The final breaking point came during Sarah's college graduation. Marcus, fresh from closing a multi-million-dollar deal, arrived late. An argument erupted. Sarah accused him of valuing money more than family. Words were spoken that could never be taken back. She told him she never wanted to see him again, and for 15 years, she kept that promise. Elena's path to nursing was carved by loss and love. Growing up in a tight-knit Mexican-American family in San Antonio, Texas, she witnessed her mother's struggle as a single parent after her father's unexpected death. When Elena was just 8 years old, her mother, Rosa Rodriguez, worked multiple jobs cleaning houses during the day, waitressing at night to keep Elena and her 2 younger brothers fed and housed. Those years taught Elena the true meaning of resilience. She watched her mother's tireless dedication, her ability to care for others even when exhausted, and found her calling. Nursing school wasn't easy. Elena worked full-time, taking classes in the evening, often studying after her younger brothers had gone to bed. Student loans and part-time jobs were her constant companions. She graduated with honors from the local community college, but the financial burden remained significant. Now, at 35, Elena supported not just herself but also helped her mother and contributed to her brother's education. Her younger brother Miguel was studying to become an engineer, while her brother Carlos was finishing high school. Every paycheck was a careful allocation: rent, family support, student loan payments, and a small emergency fund. The hospital job at Mercy General was more than just a career. It was her lifeline, her opportunity to make a difference. She had seen wealth and poverty, understood that compassion knew no economic boundaries. Her patients were more than medical records. They were stories waiting to be heard, lives waiting to be understood. Little did Elena know that Marcus Holloway would become the most unexpected chapter in her own story. The next morning, Elena entered Marcus's room for his routine checkup, expecting another typical interaction. But something in Marcus's eyes was different, a mixture of desperation and hope that immediately caught her attention. "Nurse Rodriguez," he began, his voice gravelly but deliberate, "I need to ask you something unusual." Elena checked his IV and adjusted his monitoring equipment, maintaining professional composure. "What can I help you with, Mr. Holloway?" Marcus took a deep breath, his frail hands gripping the bed's edge. "I want you to pretend to be my daughter. Just for one day." The request hung in the air, so unexpected that Elena momentarily froze. She looked at him, searching for signs of confusion or medication-induced delirium. But Marcus was lucid, his gaze steady and intensely serious. "I don't understand," Elena responded carefully, setting down the medical chart. "My daughter, Sarah, hasn't spoken to me in 15 years, Marcus explained, a tremor in his voice revealing a vulnerability that seemed impossible for a man who had once commanded boardrooms. "I'm dying. And I need to experience what it might have been like to have a relationship with her. Just once." Elena's professional training kicked in. This was more than a medical request, this was a deeply personal, emotionally charged moment. She pulled up a chair, recognizing this conversation required more than a clinical response. "Mr. Holloway, what you're asking is unconventional," she said gently. "Are you certain this is what you want?" Marcus chuckled, a sound more like a dry cough. "Conventional? I've lived an entirely conventional life. Look where it's gotten me. No real connections, no family, just money and empty achievements." The negotiation began, layer by careful layer. Marcus was methodical, even in this deeply emotional request. He proposed compensation, not just monetary, but a comprehensive package that would change Elena's life. Full scholarship for her brother Miguel's engineering program. Debt clearance for her student loans. A substantial fund for her mother's retirement. "I'm not trying to buy you," Marcus clarified, sensing her potential resistance. "I'm offering a way for your family to have opportunities one never gave my own." Elena's internal conflict was profound. As a nurse, she had ethical boundaries. As a daughter who understood family pain, she felt a deep, inexplicable connection to Marcus's request. "What exactly would this involve?" she asked, her professional facade slightly cracking. Marcus outlined his vision. One full day where she would be his daughter. Conversations, shared meals, perhaps looking through old photographs. Nothing inappropriate, nothing that would compromise her professional integrity. Just a chance to experience the familial connection he had lost. "I know it sounds crazy," he admitted. "But when you're facing the end, you realize how little the things you thought mattered actually mean." Elena's mind raced. Her brother's education, her mother's potential security, the chance to provide opportunities they had never imagined. But beyond the financial aspect, there was something else, a human story of redemption, of connection. "I'll need to set some clear boundaries," Elena finally said, her voice a blend of professional caution and emerging compassion. Marcus nodded, a glimmer of hope lighting his tired eyes. "Of course. Completely your terms." They spent the next hour crafting an agreement. Not a legal document, but a human understanding. Elena would spend a day with Marcus, treating him as a father she might have known. They would share stories, create a narrative of connection. But the boundaries were clear. This was a performance with profound emotional stakes. As they talked, the sterile hospital room transformed. It was no longer just a medical space but a canvas where a lost relationship might, for one brief moment, be reimagined. "Why me?" Elena asked finally, the question that had been hovering between them. Marcus's response was simple and devastating. "Because in all my years of looking at people, analyzing their worth, I've learned that true value isn't in balance sheets. It's in moments of genuine human connection." And just like that, an extraordinary journey was about to begin. #The transformation day. The morning of their extraordinary day began with meticulous preparation. Elena arrived early, her professional demeanor carefully softened. She wore a light blue sweater, a deliberate choice that felt both personal and reminiscent of family photographs. Her usually strict hospital hairstyle was replaced by softer waves, lending her a more intimate appearance. The hospital staff knew something unusual was happening. They exchanged curious glances as Elena transformed Marcus's sterile hospital room. She brought photographs from her own family album, carefully selected images that could pass as childhood memories. A worn teddy bear from her childhood, a small detail that would add authenticity to their performance. "Are you ready?" Elena asked, her voice gentle as she approached Marcus's bed. Marcus looked different that morning. His usual guarded expression had softened, replaced by a mixture of anticipation and vulnerability. The hospital gown seemed to fade away, replaced by the image of a father waiting to reconnect with a long-lost daughter. "I brought some old photos," Elena said, pulling up a chair close to his bed. "I thought we might look through them together." The first hour was carefully choreographed yet deeply genuine. Elena shared stories from her childhood, carefully weaving in details that could mirror a shared family history. She talked about school achievements, childhood struggles, moments of family joy, all while maintaining a delicate balance between performance and authentic emotion. Marcus listened intently, his eyes glistening with a combination of manufactured memories and genuine connection. "Tell me about the time you won your first science fair," he prompted, a detail they had discussed during their earlier negotiation. Elena seamlessly slipped into the narrative. "It was 7th grade. I created a project about water purification systems. Mom helped me stay up all night, cutting cardboard and painting my display board." She intentionally used a tone that balanced reverence and mild teenage exasperation, exactly how a daughter might speak about a supportive parent. As the morning progressed, their interaction became more natural. They shared a hospital breakfast, Elena cutting Marcus's food, helping him eat with a tenderness that transcended their initial arrangement. Moments of silence were filled with meaningful glances, a silent understanding growing between them. "I always wanted to be an engineer," Marcus revealed, his voice soft. "But my parents couldn't afford college. Everything I did was about proving I could provide opportunities one never had." Elena recognized this as a genuine moment, a peek behind the carefully constructed persona of the successful businessman. She reached out, her hand gently touching his, a gesture of comfort that felt both rehearsed and deeply sincere. "Sometimes," she said, "the pursuit of opportunity can make us lose sight of what truly matters." The afternoon brought deeper revelations. Marcus shared stories about his early business struggles, the nights he spent working, the family moments he missed. Elena listened not as a hired performer, but as a human being understanding another's profound regret. "I thought success was about money," Marcus whispered. "But success is about connection. About being present." Their conversation meandered through topics both light and profound. They discussed movies, Elena sharing her favorite films from childhood. Marcus talked about his travels, the world he had seen but rarely truly experienced. They laughed, a sound that echoed through the hospital room, surprising the nurses who passed by. As the day progressed, the line between performance and genuine emotion blurred. Elena found herself truly caring for Marcus, not just as a patient or a job, but as a human being carrying immense emotional weight. Marcus, in turn, saw in Elena not just a nurse fulfilling a request, but a representation of the daughter relationship he had lost. They looked through the photographs Elena had brought, creating a narrative of a shared history. Marcus would point to an image, and Elena would spontaneously create a story, sometimes humorous, sometimes touching. Each story was a thread, weaving a tapestry of the relationship they were constructing. "Remember when I broke my arm skateboarding?" Elena said at one point, referencing a story they had carefully constructed. "You were so worried." Marcus's response was immediate and genuine. "I was always worried about you. Worried and proud." The words hung in the air, a perfect blend of their negotiated performance and something more profound. Something real. As evening approached, the transformation was complete. They were no longer a nurse and a patient performing an unusual arrangement. They had become something else, two souls connected by a day of shared vulnerability, of manufactured yet deeply felt love. "Thank you," Marcus said as the day drew to a close, his voice barely a whisper. "For giving me the daughter I never had." Elena, her professional composure completely dissolved, felt tears forming. The day had changed her as much as it had changed Marcus. They had entered this arrangement as strangers, a transactional interaction between a dying millionaire and a compassionate nurse. They would leave it as something far more complex, far more human. A day of transformation was complete. And neither of them would ever be the same again. As night fell, the hospital room transformed. The clinical white walls seemed to soften, becoming a canvas for vulnerability and truth. Marcus, typically guarded and controlled, began to unravel the carefully constructed narrative of his life. "I wasn't just an absent father," he said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. "I was deliberately cruel." Elena shifted in her chair, sensing the weight of the confession about to unfold. The performative aspects of their day fell away, replaced by something raw and genuine. Marcus pulled out an old, worn envelope from beneath his hospital pillow. "These are letters," he explained, "letters from Sarah that I never responded to. Letters I kept but never acknowledged." The first letter, dated nearly 20 years ago, revealed a young woman's desperate attempt to connect. Sarah had written about her college achievements, her dreams, her longing for her father's approval. Each subsequent letter became progressively more distant, the hope gradually replaced by anger and resignation. "I thought providing financially was enough," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "I paid for her education, set up trust funds, made sure she never wanted for anything material. But love isn't about money." Elena listened, her professional demeanor completely dissolved. She saw not a wealthy businessman, but a man drowning in decades of regret. The revelations came like a flood. Marcus shared the true story of his family's breakdown. His wife Elizabeth had left him, not because of his work, but because of his emotional unavailability. She recognized something he had refused to see, that success was creating a wall between him and everything that truly mattered. "I was terrified of failure," he admitted. "Not business failure. Emotional failure. It was easier to build empires than to build relationships." The turning point came unexpectedly. Marcus pulled out a small, folded photograph, a picture of a young girl standing with a science fair project. Elena realized with a start that it was a photograph of her own childhood, one she had brought as part of their arrangement. "This reminds me of what I lost," Marcus whispered. "The moments. The connections." Elena's own carefully maintained professional distance began to crack. She shared her own story of loss, her father's unexpected death, the struggles her family faced, the dreams that seemed perpetually out of reach. "We're not so different," she said softly. "Fear of losing what we have can make us lose everything that matters." The confrontation was not loud or dramatic. It was a quiet, profound moment of mutual understanding. Two lives, seemingly worlds apart, suddenly converging in a hospital room. Marcus made a decision. Using the hospital phone, he asked the staff to help him contact a private investigator. "I want to find Sarah," he told Elena. "Not to fix everything. Just to apologize. To acknowledge my failures." Elena watched as a powerful businessman was reduced to his most human form, vulnerable, regretful, hoping for a chance at redemption. "Forgiveness isn't about erasing the past," she said, drawing from her own experiences with family struggles. "It's about understanding. About seeing the person behind the pain." Their conversation explored the complex terrain of human connections. They discussed the fine line between providing and being present, between financial security and emotional nurturing. Marcus spoke about the moments he had missed: school performances, graduations, simple family dinners. "I collected achievements like others collect stamps," he said with a sad smile. "But achievements can't hold your hand when you're scared. They can't comfort you when you're lonely." Elena shared her own family's resilience. How her mother had rebuilt their lives after her father's death. How they had found strength in each other, in small moments of connection that transcended financial challenges. As midnight approached, something profound had occurred. They were no longer performing a role. They had become witnesses to each other's most vulnerable truths. "What would you tell your younger self?" Marcus asked Elena. She thought carefully. "To value connection over achievement. To understand that love isn't transactional. That family is about presence, not presence." Marcus laughed, a genuine, deep laugh that seemed to lift years of burden from his shoulders. The turning point was not a single moment, but a gradual understanding. A recognition that human connection transcends circumstances, that redemption is always possible, even in the most unexpected moments. As dawn approached, Marcus and Elena sat in companionable silence. Two strangers who had become something more, witnesses to each other's humanity, architects of a connection that defied traditional boundaries. The hospital room, once a symbol of isolation, now felt like a sanctuary of understanding. #resolution and aftermath. 2 weeks after their extraordinary day together, the world around Marcus and Elena began to shift in unexpected ways. The private investigator Marcus had contacted found Sarah living in Seattle, working as an environmental research director. The initial connection was fragile, a brief, emotional phone call that lasted barely 15 minutes. But it was a start. Sarah agreed to one condition: she would meet her father, but only if Elena Rodriguez was present. The meeting took place in a small, quiet cafe near the hospital. Marcus, now considerably weaker but determined, sat in a wheelchair. Elena arrived early, her presence a bridge between a father and daughter who had been separated by years of pain and misunderstanding. Sarah entered the cafe, a woman who bore remarkable resemblance to the photographs Marcus had kept hidden for years. Her professional demeanor couldn't hide the vulnerability in her eyes. She was precise, controlled, much like the father she had once resented. "I didn't come to forgive you," Sarah said as she sat down. "I came to understand." Elena watched, her role now subtly transformed from a performer to a silent guardian of this delicate reconciliation. She observed the similarities between father and daughter, the same sharp intelligence, the same way of holding tension in their shoulders. Marcus spoke first. No excuses. No attempts to justify his past. Just a raw, unfiltered acknowledgement of his failures. "I missed your entire life," he said. "Not just the big moments. The small ones. The ones that actually matter." Sarah shared her journey. How his absence had driven her to prove her worth, how she had built a life defined by purpose and impact. She spoke of her own research on sustainable urban development, a path that ironically mirrored her father's business instincts, just directed toward healing rather than profit. The conversation was not a Hollywood reconciliation. It was messy, complicated, filled with years of unspoken hurt. But it was real. Elena's presence was crucial. She became a neutral ground, a witness to a reconnection neither thought possible. Her own story of family resilience provided context, a living example of how love transcends traditional boundaries. As news of their unusual story spread, something unexpected happened. Other patients in the hospital began requesting similar interventions. Families fractured by time and misunderstanding saw a potential pathway to reconnection. The hospital administration, initially skeptical, began exploring a formal program. Elena was invited to develop a protocol for what they tentatively called emotional reconciliation support, a groundbreaking approach to patient care that recognized healing as more than just physical. Marcus, recognizing the potential impact, established a foundation. Not just a financial endowment, but a living, breathing initiative focused on supporting families in crisis, on creating pathways for reconnection. Money can build bridges, he told Elena during one of their subsequent conversations. But human compassion is what allows people to actually cross them. Sarah, initially reluctant, became involved in the foundation's development. Her expertise in sustainable development merged with her father's business acumen to create something genuinely transformative. For Elena, the consequences were profound. Her brother's educational opportunities expanded. Miguel received a full scholarship for his engineering degree. Her mother, for the first time, could consider retirement without financial stress, but the true impact was more personal. Elena discovered a calling beyond traditional nursing. She began lecturing at medical conferences about the psychological dimensions of patient care, about the healing power of genuine human connection. The unexpected twist came 6 months later. Marcus passed away, but not before completing something remarkable. His will included provisions not just for his biological family, but for Elena and her entire family. A trust was established that would support community health initiatives in underserved areas. Sarah, inheriting her father's business acumen but guided by a different philosophy, transformed the family's corporate holdings. She redirected investments toward sustainable technologies, creating a legacy that honored both her father's drive and her own principles. Elena received a handwritten letter from Marcus, delivered posthumously. Its contents were private, but those who saw her reading it noticed tears not of sadness, but of profound understanding. The story of the sick millionaire and the nurse spread. It became more than a personal narrative, it became a testament to the possibility of human reconnection. In hospitals, in boardrooms, in family living rooms, people began to ask, what conversations are we not having? What connections are we allowing to slip away? Marcus Holloway, a man who had spent a lifetime building financial empires, discovered in his final days that the most significant architecture is the bridge between human hearts. And Elena Rodriguez, a nurse who had agreed to an impossible request, realized that compassion is the most powerful currency of all. In the end, family is not defined by blood, but by moments of genuine connection. The story of Marcus Holloway and Elena Rodriguez is more than a tale of a dying millionaire and a compassionate nurse. It is a profound reminder that human relationships transcend our carefully constructed boundaries, that we often measure life by achievements, by dollars earned or titles acquired. But true wealth is measured in moments of understanding, in the bridges we build between hearts separated by time, pain, and misunderstanding. Marcus discovered this truth in his final days. Elena embodied it through her remarkable compassion. Sarah transformed it into a legacy of healing and reconnection. Their journey reminds us that it is never too late to rebuild.